It takes a few seconds to kick in sometimes.
Got a ticker going.
Yep.
Oh, there it's recording now.
There we go. That's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, we just want to record it because there are a few people who can't make it today, and they did specifically ask if we could record it. So that's what we're doing. So welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining today to hear about the Emerald Open Research Platform. I'm Sharon Parkinson. I'm a Publishing Development Manager here at Emerald, and part of my role includes being the Quality Education for All Gateway Lead on the platform. I'm going to introduce the rest of the team in a moment, but what I want to say is this is the first time that we've actually had a group of Gateway advisors together, you know, from the different gateways. So it'll be really good to have your feedback and your comments and your questions as we go, because we want to make sure you get everything from this that you want. But also, if afterwards there are any questions that you think of that you don't get a chance to ask now, then please just get in touch with any of us with your comments or questions, and we'll be really happy to hear from you. So yeah, as I say, use the chat function, use the hands up function to ask questions as we go along, and we'll do our best to address them before the hour is out. But we do hope to have a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. So we'll see how we get on. How do I move the slides? There we go. So this is the agenda. This is what we're going to be covering today. So I'm going to do a little bit of a very brief introduction to the team. And then we're going to look at the background to the platform and the journey so far. I'll then do a quick live demo walkthrough of the site for those of you who are maybe not that familiar with it. And then we're going to cover open peer review. We're going to have a little look at the author experience and some of the feedback that we've had from authors. And then we're going to cover the article processing charges, and that includes the discounts and the vouchers and so on. And then we're going to finish with sort of forward looking at the next strategic objectives for the platform. And then, as I said earlier, we hopefully will have time as well for questions. So in terms of the team, we've got Shelley Allen, who is our head of open research. We have Martin Whiteford, who, like me, is a publishing development manager. And Martin is also the lead on the Healthier Lives Gateway. Florence de Berg is, again, a publishing development manager, and she has responsibility for the Fairer Society Gateway. And finally, Jo Jones, also a publishing development manager, and she is the lead for the Responsible Management Gateway, but also for the Sustainable Food Systems Gateway. So I'm going to hand over now to Shelley, who's going to talk about the sort of background and the journey so far. You'll have to tell me, Shelley, when you want me to move the slides on.
Yeah, sure. Oh, hello, I'm Shelley. I'm the head of open research. Emerald Open Research was actually launched just before I started with the company, but we had launched the platform, but it didn't have any content. I can still talk to the background and to the journey. If you move on, next slide, please. Coin a phrase. So open to all. This is our philosophy around open at Emerald. And what this means to us is that we're not willing to raise paywalls when we remove the paywalls. And because researchers in various parts of the world have different circumstances and different challenges, for us that means having a mix of open access policies and outlets for our communities, so that whatever their circumstances, there's a route that enables them to be open. And what that means at Emerald in practice, if we have the next slide please, Sharon, is that we have lots and lots of different routes. So we have our zero embargo green policy, we enable open access within our hybrid, we have fully gold open access journals. We also have platinum journals, which is where the costs of publication are met by a sponsor, so there's no APCs. That's also potentially a model we could replicate into Emerald Open Research, for example, and we've seen that in some of our partnerships, which we'll talk to. And we also do have an open access books programme. So this just to situate Emerald Open Research within that open tool philosophy. And what Emerald Open Research really gives us is we say this is the jewel in our crown. It is the most open, the most progressive route to open that we have for our communities. Because of its mandating of open peer review and open data, and the work we do to support our authors in understanding what that means and to help them on that part of their journey. And it's also the reason we've got the signatory of DORA there, that we are a signatory of DORA. Emerald Open Research is a partnership with F1000. And what F1000 say is they will not put the platform forward for an impact factor, because they believe that that impact factor is so misused in sort of tenure practices, for example, and in REF and things like this. So there's the philosophy behind what F1000 are trying to do, and we're in partnership with them just to learn and to develop this platform within the social sciences team. So if I could have the next slide, please, Sharon. So just in case you're not fully aware, what is the difference between open access and open research? Well, the main difference is that open access is actually a part of open research, it's a subset. So what we mean by open access is that final research output is made openly available to all, no paywall, no barrier to people reading and reusing that work. But open research really is about the cultural practice around the development of that research. So this talks to open data, to open software, it includes open access, it's about inclusion, equity and diversity, bringing in society into the way that we do research, and therefore the impact that it can have. And this is really well demonstrated on the next slide, which I've borrowed from University of Utrecht under a CC BY license. So I'm allowed to show you this slide that they put together. Essentially what this shows is that instead of research being published in a journal and really only being available to other scientists, and really being quite siloed from the rest of society, the aim of open research is to involve society and to really look at the cultural elements around it as well. So we have more transparency in the process of how we create research. Really important in an era of fake news, for example, and people not trusting experts and these sorts of things. How open science is there to help us to do that. And also that it's really about ensuring that research does have societal impact beyond the academy. So that's a really important tenet of open science. That obviously speaks to Emerald and our own mission in ensuring that the research we publish does have real world impact. On the next slide, please, Sharon. So really, this is about us taking that research from the university into society. And Emerald Open Research, as I said before, is our jewel in the crown for how we achieve this. It's really gone beyond the market, as it were. Within social sciences, I think it's fair to say that it does lag behind the STEM subjects somewhat in terms of its general knowledge about open access and open research. As well as there being lots of other barriers as well. But this is why we've launched the platform, in order for us to go ahead of our market, our communities, and us learn as much as we can, so that we can then support them in that journey and ensure that we have provided a platform. So I'll delve more directly into Emerald Open Research now. So Sharon, on the next slide, you may have seen this before. We have been talking to the next couple of slides for a little while now. But basically, the main tenets of Emerald Open Research, if you're not already aware, which hopefully you are a bit, but really it's to enable that rapid publication, to have the open peer review and the open data policy. That it's therefore more author-led. There's not an editor desk rejecting, for example, or hopefully trying to remove some of that bias that we do see in closed peer review. And it's also to enable different forms of content. So since we launched the platform, we have added additional content types like case studies. We are looking to add some conference papers, and we're really interested in involving the kinds of content that we are publishing on the platform in conjunction with our communities and what they feel they need to most to have the most impactful impactful response to the research that they're publishing. So we've also been doing policy briefs, for example. And it also allows the research to be assessed on its own merits. So again, that's not about the metrics assigned to it, but each individual article, how it's reviewed, how it's used, it is citable, as are the reviews. So the authors can get, so the reviewers can get some recognitions through that as well. On the next slide, please, Shannon. Thanks. So the reason that this is really important to us and our overall vision of enabling real world impact in society is that it does accelerate those the dissemination of the findings. It makes sure that they are open, so they are more reproducible. Where you have your data available, people can check, they can reuse, they can build on what you're doing more easily. So it should make research more efficient. It allows each article to be assessed on its own merit, as I said. And ensures that as it's published so quickly that those ideas can get out there into the world as close as possible. We saw real benefits of that during the COVID pandemic. We did make a pot of funds available to publish our COVID related content onto the platform. That was very popular. And it also reduces the barriers to collaborative research through data sharing, transparency and attribution as well. On the next slide, please. So if you're not aware, because you may just be involved in one gateway, we actually have 6 gateways. We did do a little rejig of them recently, but they are Healthier Lives, Fairer Society, Quality Education for All, Responsible Management, Sustainable Food Systems, Sustainable Cities. And this is just a way for people to have easy access into the content that would best suit them and what they're researching on. Each gateway is aligned to the UN SDGs, usually more than one. And we are absolutely open to creating additional gateways if, as and when we see a need for that amongst the communities. So just to be aware of that as well. Within those gateways, you can also create collections and you can also create special themes. So actually, I should say collections can be created and they can sit across different gateways if we wish. But the themes can sit just almost like a special issue within a oh no, I've gone really far ahead. What happened? These are not my slides. A sneak peek of everything that's coming your way.
Sorry,
anyway,
it's just I'm trying to get back to. I accidentally pressed something and I have no idea what it was that I pressed.
That's no problem. I can actually go.
Sorry about that, Shelley. To okay, there we go.
So yes, with the 6 gateways. So we have those 6 gateways. We created those. We have had some success in also creating collections. So what happens there is a partner, perhaps they've got a funded research project or a particular aim. We can work with them to create a branded collection. It will sit, the content will sit in the relevant gateways as well. But it just pulls that together and brands it for them according to whichever project they're working with or their institution, for example. So that's been successful and a way for us to build out the content on the platform too. We've published, I think it's slightly more than 100 research articles now. We've got 15 documents. So the documents are there, they're kind of flat PDFs, they're not peer reviewed, but it's also, you can have PowerPoint up there. We've got 1 poster, we've got 2 slides, and 7 collections. So we're really pleased with those collections. And I do encourage you to go in and have a look around and see how those all come together and how nice it is in terms of how you can find content that either relates to a specific project or to a specific institution. And we've seen really good amount of engagement in terms of the usage that we see being open access. There's no barriers to that, so that's fantastic. Obviously, every article has got the data associated with it, and we've seen that we are able to track that the articles are starting to be cited within policy briefs. So we've got the UK Parliament, WHO, and in government documents as well. So this is fantastic news for us in terms of that aim of trying to make sure that that the research we're publishing is having a real world impact. I'm sure we've got some good examples of that coming up as well from my colleagues. On the next slide, Just to give you an idea of the breadth of the global community that is engaging in this, so we've got good global authorship. We're getting a lot of traction internationally in terms of the usage that we're seeing, and we're seeing that go up each year as well. So and we're also looking to improve on that all the time. So currently we're working on how we can improve the SEO and things like that. So it's not something we sit back and just think, well, it's open, nothing more we need to do. There's a lot we're doing behind the scenes to ensure that people do find and become aware of the research that's published on the site. Final slide. I still think it's quite final, but next slide. But to be fair, there have been some challenges, and that's maybe something we can work with the Gateway advisors on as well. There's definitely complexity in the evolving research landscape, so we're very aware that mandates and policies from various different funders and institutions can be really confusing to authors. I'm pleased to say that Emerald Open Research is Plan S compliant. But that, obviously the way to comply is constantly shifting, so we do have to keep on top of that. And also the way that we're seeing changes in quality and impact, that is obviously something we have to keep abreast of too. And we do see massive global variance in terms of how much authors are mandated and supported to switch to an open access way of working. And there being still quite a lot of not good support for authors within their institutions to do their research in an open way entirely. So by the time they come to us, that can be a bit of a barrier. If they've never been asked, for example, to make their data available before, they may have already conducted all of their research, and now we're asking them to make that data openly available. That can be a real challenge. The funding for APCs can be a challenge. That's one of the reasons why the collections are so good, and because it does enable that APC to be paid for the author on behalf of a sponsoring organisation. And we're also entering into as many transformative agreements as we can in order to ensure that our authors can publish. I know that we will be talking about that later. I think it's fair to say that the culture still needs some way to go before this is really embedded as a way of as a general practice for authors. And we do need to be making sure that, for example, trust is important. This is a high quality publication venue, for sure it is, but definitely that's something we have to educate our community on, particularly with there being predatory publishers out there. I think most people know Emerald isn't a predatory publisher, but it's still such a new model that people can be a bit trepidatious. And also learning about partnerships. So we do have those collections, those are partnerships, and they're fantastic. But still, what we do see a lot is a lot of people who are really keen to experiment with the model, to work with us on open research, but not necessarily having access to that funding. So how can we tie those up across communities? Because we also have other conversations with different people who have pots of money but are not sure who within their university, for example, who would most benefit from being able to access that pot of money. And we do find that within the institution there seems to be not great connections between different departments, and perhaps the library and different departments and roles in the university as well. I think that to say, although obviously it depends, some are much better than others. So that's actually it from me. I think there's now a live demonstration. I'll be here for the rest of the presentation, so I'm happy to answer any questions as necessary in the chat. Just drop it in there and I'll happily answer that as we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Okay, so I'm now going to try and share my screen again and do a live demo. So I will go and open the site first, share my screen again. Okay, so just bear with me a moment. Okay, so hopefully you can see the Emerald Open Research landing page there now. So obviously this is the main landing page. So it's just, you know, emeraldopenresearch.com. And on this page, across this, what we call the mega nav, you can browse all the articles that have published across all the gateways. You can go into specific gateways and collections. And then there's lots of information here in these sort of drop down tabs about how to publish, and generally just about the policies and so on around the platform. If you haven't already registered, then I would recommend that you do that, because that way you can set up alerts and things. You don't have to register in order to access anything, because it is completely, truly open. There are no barriers whatsoever, and that includes not having to register. But it's probably a good idea to register just so that you can get in and set those alerts and things. So this page obviously just has a little bit of main highlight detail, talks about the 6 different gateways, and then it highlights the benefits for the different stakeholder groups, so the researchers, the research itself, and also society. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on browse, and that's going to take us through to all the 100 articles that have published so far. You can see here from these tabs that we're in articles. There are also, as Shelley did mention, a number of documents that we have on there. So these are things like policy briefs and policy documents, strategy documents, and so on. We also have a tab for posters, because people can publish their posters on here, and also slide decks, and we have a couple of those. I'm just going to go back to articles, and I'm going to scroll back in time and find an article that was published. I think it was last year, and the reason I'm doing that is because it's had a lot of review. It's been through the review process a lot of times, so I just want to be able to kind of demonstrate that for you. So just bear with me while I scroll down. Here we go. So this one here, it's an opinion article. It's called How COVID-19 Has Exposed Inequalities in the UK Food System. And these are the authors. So there's Maddie Power, Bob Doherty, Katie Pybus, and Kate Pickett. What you can also see at a glance at this level is who the peer reviewers are. And we can see that there are 5. And what we can also see from these 5 ticks here is that all 5 reviewers have reviewed the article. It's been through a number of revisions, and it's got to the point where all 5 reviewers have approved it. So that's as many as you can have. But, you know, that's, I think, 5. It's quite unusual, I think, to get 5 people approve. You know, when you compare that to traditional journals, that's quite a difference. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click through onto the actual article, and straight away, you know, there it is in its entirety. There are no, it's just one click away. So it's very accessible. This summary down the right hand side shows the different sort of versions and rounds of peer review that have been undertaken. So you can see that the first version back in April 2021, I think it was originally posted, or maybe it was 2020. 2 of the peer reviewers gave feedback that required some revisions. So in May, those revisions were made, and then the reviewers approved. So that's how it's got to its 5-tick status. It elaborates here on the reviewers' affiliations, and you can also click through, read, or you can click through here to all comments to actually see what the reviewers have said at, you know, the various stages. This metrics bar at a glance shows that there have been over 9,000 views and over 1,000 actual downloads. You can also click on this little metrics graphic, and that will take you through and break down the alt metrics data. So we can see at a glance here that it's been tweeted by 9, it's been referenced in a policy source, it's featured in 2 blogs, and so on. This is actually powered by Altmetric. Now, if at your institution you don't have a subscription to Altmetric, then you won't be able to go beyond this. But because Emerald's subscribed to Altmetric, we can actually drill down further and see exactly who's tweeted, the kind of geographical spread and of attention that the article has had through Twitter and through other, you know, social media outlets. And then you can actually click on the different mentions, types of mention, and see exactly which news outlets have mentioned the research, and then actually access those pieces. So it's very comprehensive. It gives you a, you know, complete picture of the attention that the article is gaining. So if we go back, I think that's, you know, that's probably in a nutshell the main features. So yeah, I mean, as Shelley said, you know, do go in and have a look. There's probably, well, I'm certain that there are going to be some articles on there that are of interest to you. So that's how the articles look. So that was done through Browse, where everything is collected all together. If you click on the Gateways and Collections tab, you can then enter a specific gateway level. Or if you click on Collections, you can see that we have partnerships with these associations and institutions where they have a very specific collection. So for instance, EAUC, this is, you know, there's about the collection here, and then you can browse the articles in that collection. So this is the Alliance for Sustainability Leadership in Education. So they've published 7 articles within their collection, and collections are something that we would really like to do more of. So we hope to see these growing over time. And I think that is it for the demo. Obviously, I would encourage you to go in and explore it yourself. If you have any questions, then obviously, you know, please do shout at any point, get in touch with any of the Gateway leads, and we'll be able to help. So now I have to try and get back to the main slide deck, and I'm just going to go through and get back to the slide I need to be at. Apologies for this. Okay, here we go. So I think it's over to Martin now for open peer review.
Thanks, Sharon. As has already been said, a key concern here is that peer review is an open, transparent process, and that review takes place post-production publication. Well, what does that mean, practically speaking? If we can move through to the next slide, we can compare and contrast the traditional approach to peer review, the approach that we take with open research. Sharon, can you? Next slide, please. So in a traditional peer review process, there are a variety of stages. The first stage being that the author submits an article to the journal, and the editor plays a key role as a gatekeeper in this process. So the editor subjects the paper to a number of checks. If they process through the checks, then the editor then selects 2 or 3 blind peer reviewers. The article then goes out for peer review, and the peer reviewers provide their responses. And the responses can take 3 forms. It can take the form of an acceptance, a rejection, or a revision. So then the author consequently resubmits the paper if the paper's been asked to provide revisions. And then the editor sends it to the reviewers. Next slide, please. So in the open peer review process, the submission process is slightly different. So the submission can take the form of a number of categories and content types described, but here we're talking about articles and peer review of articles. So the article undergoes a number of peer production checks to see that it meets basic standards. Journal, the gateway. If the research paper meets the pre-publication checks, it's then published online. And it's at this point where the open peer review process is different to that of the conventional type. So each peer review report approval status is published alongside the reviewer's name and affiliation. So the process is now transparent. It's author-led. Next slide, please. So think a bit more about the peer review process. So as has been said previously, authors are responsible for taking the lead on the peer review process. So this practically involves identifying subject experts, people who can provide unbiased reports. So we ask that the authors identify and suggest at least 5 potential reviewers. If the authors are unable to do so, we have an algorithmic system that could potentially identify experts in the field. But the editorial team will continue to ask authors to make suggestions until at least 2 peer review reports have been received and published. I'm thinking about the criteria for selecting potential peer reviewers. There's essentially 3 steps in this process. The first step is identifying peer reviewers with scientific expertise. Part of that involves a track record of publishing at a minimum 3 articles in the relevant topic. The second part of the process relates to experience. Typically, we ask peer reviewers to have a PhD or a higher form of qualification. There will be times, of course, when this isn't possible, perhaps when some of a more practitioner or academic background is asked. In such cases, we ask that the experience is relevant, that the peer review can make positive contribution and comment about the quality of the publication. And third and finally, independence is key to this process. By way of example, it's crucial that the reviewers and the authors do not work for the same institution or have professional personal ties. We do that because we want to ensure that the process is unbiased and as transparent as possible. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about peer review, as I said a moment ago, we're talking explicitly about articles, not the other forms of document, such as posters, conference proceedings. So the peer reviewer will receive guidance on how to take a review for each submission. So, as said previously, the reviewer produces and publishes a written report. And alongside the written report, there are 3 approval statuses. So number 1 being approved, which essentially means no or very minor changes are required. The second status is approved with reservations. So thinking about traditional peer review, that would relate to minor or major amendments. And third and finally, not approved. By not approved, we're referring to submissions that are poor in quality and may have fundamental flaws. That could be in terms of its methodological basis or in terms of its conceptual apparatus. So once the reviews have been received and published, authors, if receive approval with reservation status, are encouraged to actively, reflexively engage with the reviewers' comments and criticisms. And then the process begins again, where peer reviewers are asked to comment on the latest iteration of the journal article. So it's worth saying here that all revisions of the article are publicly available, independently cited, but it's the latest version of the paper that is published by default. And again, said a moment ago, this process is a living process, and by that we mean that the article will be modified or updated at any point. It might be that research is ongoing and that the author wants to incorporate additional detail that's relevant to the paper and to the study that underpins it. Our next slide, please, Sharon. So I think Sharon talked us through this process, particularly in terms of the approval status and the reviewer status. So you can see on the left-hand side, unlike Sharon's example where we had 5 ticks, we've only got 2 here. We can also see the versions, and immediately below that, the names and affiliations of the peer reviewers. And then again, on the right-hand side, we see the reviewer reports and a bit more information about the quality of the submission. Next slide, please. So a question worth asking is, what are the benefits for peer review for the EOR process? I mean, in many ways, it's similar to the more traditional journal process. So as a peer reviewer, you get to see cutting-edge research early on in the process. It's an opportunity to engage with that research. It's an opportunity to engage your critical thinking around scholarly communication. But also, more importantly, it's a reciprocal relationship. Peer review can only exist if authors and peer reviewers are willing to act as both authors and reviewers at particular. Next. So aside from those more sort of alongside that, the EOR platform has a number of distinguishing features that make it appealing to a reviewer. So with each peer review report, there's a DOI. So it's an identifier that can be used to demonstrate that you've acted as a peer reviewer. And again, that's something that you might then want to publicize, whether it's through your ORCID account, through institutional accounts. And another factor that distinguishes the EOR platform in our approach is the use of viewer metrics. So as a reviewer, you can go in and see how many times your review has been read. These different factors, we hope, build up to a more appealing way of approaching peer review.
Okay, thanks, Martin. I'm now going to play a video, which I hope will work, and I hope that I've managed to get the sound embedded. So I'm just going to press play. This relates to the author experience. We're getting some really positive feedback actually from our authors, and this video is just the testimony of one of our authors, and you can hear what he has to say about the platform. So I will press play now.
It's been refreshing because it's been I've been able to publish some of my collaborative work, which is interdisciplinary. It's not always easy to find somewhere quickly that will do that. So the process was quick and fair, and we got some really good reviews. It's enabled us to improve our future work. Yeah, it was very, I mean, and also the design of the gateways, it's really aesthetic. And so I think that's good as well.
Did the sound come through there?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Okay, so yeah, I mean, obviously, what Bob says there is that he believes that it's a really good platform for interdisciplinary research, which is a really good point. And he also mentions the speed to publication, which is another huge benefit, I think, for our authors. But the feedback that we're getting from other authors also suggests that being in the driving seat around peer review is also advantageous. And as Martin sort of just highlighted, the fact that authors are able to nominate their own peer reviewers, obviously subject to some basic checks, you know, is a really key feature, I think, of the platform. What we're also seeing as we start to gain traction and we're publishing more articles is that we're seeing repeat authorship. So I think that in itself is testament to the kind of positive author experience. We're actually in the process of garnering more feedback from a wider range of authors so that we can kind of pull together a compilation, a short video that we can put on the site and share with other potential authors, because I think it's really useful for potential authors to know exactly what the experience is like, because this is so different and quite a new way of publishing. I think those testimonies from existing authors are going to, you know, prove to be a really useful tool, if you like. So look out for those. We will be sharing those later when we have more. I'm going to hand over to Florence now, who is going to talk through the article processing charges.
Thank you, Sharon. So, Emerald Open Search charges an article processing charge APC for all articles. And these APCs are based on article types and not on word count, which would not be advantageous for social sciences matters. And this new pricing model based on article type is therefore very competitive and on the lower side of the current APC markets. And you can see the price we charge according to each of the three categories. And a detailed breakdown is reported as well on our side. And this breakdown takes into account the varying editorial time and effort involved in publishing different article types. Next slide, please, Sharon. As Shelley mentioned, we also are very aware of the disparities in accessing open access funding. And we are very committed in making open research open and accessible, inclusive to all. We therefore use our revenues from our subscriptions to invest in waiver program that allows corresponding authors from low and middle income countries to publish their work either without charge or with a 50% discount. In addition, Emerald also has a number of open access publishing agreements with institutions around the world to support their goal and requirement for open access outputs. Authors from those institutions are eligible for prepaid open access vouchers that Shelley mentioned earlier. And you could check the eligibility for access to those prepaid vouchers by checking the link reported on this slide. Thank you, Sharon. And I think I'm passing on to Joe now to talk about the collection.
Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about a bit about our future strategy and the future focus, what we want to work towards. And as Sharon mentioned and Shelley mentioned earlier, collections are a key part of that strategy. And while we're happy to continue to accept individual submissions, what we would really like to do is develop some of the more of these collections. And it would be really great to work with you guys to help us identify opportunities at your institutions and with colleagues who are working on projects that could benefit from this style of publication. And our reasons for this are really about supporting the research community in embracing open and working with it, and seeing how we can support some of those challenges that the interdisciplinary, in particular interdisciplinary communities are facing. So supporting that need, as Bob mentioned in the video, the need for organisations to publish research projects that are across multiple, would typically have to go across multiple publications. So what we're doing is providing this one area, this one home for interdisciplinary research to live. It enables the authors to publish openly with ease and not have that administrative burden of paying an APC. We know that you're all time poor, and what we're trying to do is identify those pain areas and what can we do to support you. And also as it's new publishing area for a lot of people, then additional author support can sometimes be needed when publishing openly. So we can guide people through this landscape and help in that way too. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits of publishing a collection? So there's all research published within collections is immediately made available. So as Sharon mentioned, speed to your audience if you want. So it's made available for anybody to read and download and share. And having themed collections increases discoverability of research papers because all findings can easily be accessed at the same time. It's perpetual, so unlike project websites, there's no limited shelf life. Articles in the collection will appear across Emerald Open Research Gateways, and this again increases the reach of work because you're not pigeonholing it and trying to force it into one discipline area. Potentially that can take it to new audiences, all of whom can then share your work more quickly. And your outputs may also reach more of the communities that we share information with. And in these ways, that could help the work contribute to that societal change more quickly than it otherwise would. Readers can sign up to content alerts from the collections as well. So as soon as a new article is uploaded, they're notified, which brings them to the article and increases that visibility again. There's the control of selecting reviewers, including practitioners and policymakers, alongside academics. And once the researchers pass the initial pre-publication checks, it can reach the platform in days. And this allows crucial findings to be made at a really fast pace. Articles can also be updated or revised quickly. And it's flagged on the article so you can see what's happening. You can publish traditional outputs and non-traditional outputs, and this includes research articles, method articles, study protocols, opinion articles, research notes, policy documents, data sets, policy briefs, case studies, posters, etc. And there's an open discussion section for each article on the platform, and that enables anyone in the wider research community and beyond to join in discussions with that your work creates, and encourages dynamic and open debate. There's a share function as well, which means that the articles that are up there can be shared on social media just with a couple of clicks. So again, you know, addressing what a lot of people want to be doing but don't always feel they have time to do. Next slide, please, Sharon. So N8 Agri-Food is one of the collections, and this is one of the collections that Bob Doherty, who spoke to you in the video earlier, was part of. And this was a unique research collaboration between 8 research-intensive universities. And they take a food systems approach to tackling food security. And this, the paper that Sharon referenced early was actually picked up by a food bank in Knaresborough, and they actually contacted us to tell us that they changed the way they did things directly as a result of seeing his policy advice. So that was definitely a pathway to impact. We've also worked with East Delta University, and the main purpose of this collection was to connect and highlight the societal and environmental changes in various aspects of these fields and take an interdisciplinary approach to address the emerging regional and international challenges of the global pandemic had exposed. And with East Delta, sorry, next slide, please, Sharon. With East Delta, we built in a training webinar, which was an introduction to the open landscape and a guide to getting published on this sort of platform. And Sharon and I delivered it to the ECRs there. We also worked with East Sussex University, where we combined impact services into an EOR package, and that was to support impact literacy. So there's a lot that we can do in terms of supporting EOR with other supports and services that we've got. So in terms of looking at the most likely partnerships, what are the sort of institutions that are most likely to work with us? Well, the progressive universities, certainly signatories of DORA, where they're less focused on the impact factor, and predominantly there would be European, because they're a bit further ahead with open access publishing. All those things that East Delta talk about, you know, focusing on sustainable development goals, social issues, problem solving of various social domains by adapting distinctive approaches in diverse areas such as business management, engineering and liberal arts. And those institutions and organisations that have active relationships with potential funding partners. We've done some work recently with academics who've been applying for Network Plus grants through UKRI, and we've built some of these sort of collections into the funding proposals around impact services, and then when we've talked about what the outputs of the projects are where they're likely to live, EOR seems to be a good design of home for that. Okay, next slide, please. So what makes that service wraparound unique? It's to support embedding open practices and to help faculty to share their research, essentially. We don't just want to publish research and host it on the site. We want to work in partnership. We want to work closely with institutions and to really help support them through workshop and resources and named contacts. So we want to develop it. We want to be able to get the feedback. And we want to do a continual improvement process. And in terms of Emerald's goal strategy, the gateways align with a broader strategic commitment and strength around interdisciplinary research, underpinned by the SDGs to achieve that real world impact. So our sort of ambition is to work with you guys and to work with the institutes and to work with the organisations to enable that to happen. Okay, and I think with that, we've got 5 minutes left for questions, Sharon.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And I do apologise for my reckless use of clicking the button to move the slides on. I don't know what is going on. A simple job to click a button to move a slide on, and I managed to make a complete mess of it. But there you go. So yeah, thanks everybody. I don't know whether any questions cropped up in the chat because I wasn't able to see the chat because I was sharing my screen. I don't think there were, but does anybody have any?
There was a question.
It's one in this chat.
Okay, there we go. Do peer reviewers get APC credits as with other journals? Pretty routine for authors to recommend peer reviewers for journals too. Okay, is Shelley still on the call?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Are you able to answer that, Shelley?
Yeah, I'm afraid at the moment, no, that is not the case. We haven't been offering APC credits to I haven't been aware that that's routine in other journals. So if you've got some examples, that would be really helpful, and I'm happy to go that way and look into it as incentives, for example. But at the moment, no, that's not something that we've been.
All the journals I'm either editor for or peer reviewer for, they ask all authors to suggest, you know, several peer reviewers, and that all goes on the database. So it's pretty. I'm just saying it's not a unique, distinctive feature. So I'd sort of drop that back.
Oh no, I mean, we do ask
Yeah.
them to recommend peer reviewers for sure. We definitely do that, but we haven't been
Yeah.
offering them APC
APC, yeah.
to publish in the platform. So if that was the suggestion, I can look at that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Julian, you have your hand up. You have a question.
Yeah, I was wondering whether in this open process, the selection of reviewers is a kind of higher level, if you like, than just like I would use in the journal normally, because the criteria that you gave seem to be much more restricted than I expected, really. So.
I can speak to that one again if you like, Sharon.
Yeah.
So essentially, so F1000 undertake that element of the process for us. They do have some pretty strict criteria. So essentially, the reviewer needs to be qualified, and they're very transparent about what that criteria is. But they need to be qualified, and there are examples of what would qualify a reviewer on the site.
Yeah.
And they can't be too personally connected. So they can't be somebody that you work with very closely, that works in your department, for example. It would be fine, for example, if it was they were to say they work for the NHS, because it's such a big organisation, but
Yeah.
were they to work in the same cardiology department, no, they would not be a.
Oh, yeah, I mean that's normal, yeah. But another thing, like they need to have published at least 3 articles on a relevant subject. That wouldn't necessarily be the case for a lot of people that I get to review papers. But so it is a bit different then.
I mean, that's their current guidelines at the moment. Again, they are happy to work with us. So if the advisors feel that there should be different criteria, or we've been working with them, for example, on how to get some more practice-based voices into the reviewer pool, and obviously those people won't have published 3 articles. So we've been working on various different criteria. We're always open to feedback from all of you as to what you think might work better, and we can work with F1000 on those things.
Right, thank you.
Does anybody else have a question? I mean, obviously, if you don't want to ask at this point, then please do get in touch with any of us afterwards at any point in the future with just comments or recommendations or questions. That's absolutely fine. But we are on 2 o'clock, and obviously that's when we are scheduled to finish. So we don't want to encroach on any of your time beyond 2 o'clock. So thank you so much for your participation and for listening in today. We really would appreciate any feedback. You know, this is still a very young product for us, and it is in a very new and innovative style of publishing. So we are still learning, and we're very, very open to feedback and comments. So please don't hold back. So yeah, thank you once again. And I'm sure we will be in touch shortly for one reason or another.
Thanks so much.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.